Hello and welcome to another Simsol webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. As we all know, storm season is upon us once again, and we've already had one named storm, and we want to help you get ready. During this webinar, we're going to be covering tips, resources, things you need, setting up preferences, backing up, and a lot more. We want to make sure you're ready when you're called into the field. All right, let's go through the agenda. First, we're going to talk about hardware and software. From there, we're going to talk about adjuster's tools, things you definitely want to have on you. Then we're going to go to insurance information, also talk about funds as far as how much money you want to have. Then we're going to go into vehicle maintenance, some tips for that, and then also provide some resources for accommodations. From there, we're going to get into the Simsol program. We're going to talk about updating and setting up Simsol, and then tips for speeding up the estimating process, and then we're going to wrap it up with backing up claims. All right, let's get started here. One of the most important things to make sure is working is your computer. You want to make sure your OS and security programs are up to date and running. You also want to make sure you have a way to access the internet, make sure you know how to use before heading out in the field. Another great thing to have is an adequate amount of flash drives on you. You just never know. You definitely need a lot of storage. And if you are using a cloud storage device service like Google Drive, Dropbox, or OneDrive, make sure it's also working. And if you plan to bring a printer, make sure it's configured with the computer before taking it with you. Okay, so next is tools you'll be needing for adjusting. Seeing that I'm not an adjuster and our trainer Danny is one with over 25 years of experience, I'm going to take it over to him now. All right, Danny, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Nicole.
All right, wonderful. All right, Danny, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure of actually being here and showing you all about how to get ready for a storm season using Simsol. And the first thing that we're going to be talking about is going to be the measuring devices. This includes, you want to take probably 2 interior measuring tapes, either 25 or 50 foot. You never can have enough of those. Next thing is you probably want to use an exterior measuring tape, 100 foot or more. And that's really good for taking your exterior dimensions. The next thing that is kind of new is using a disto, but it has to be Bluetooth. And the reason it doesn't really, but the reason why I want to emphasize the Bluetooth is that it will work in Simsol into the using a Simsol tab or your laptop tablet. And it right from the area listing screen, it will actually put those dimensions right in with the click of a button. The last thing there is you've got your measuring wheel. I've used this many times. It's especially when you can't get that tape on that wall. Okay. The next thing is a moisture meter, and the reason why I want to talk about a moisture meter is because what happens is let's say you go into a storm site and into the house, and you can't find a water line. Well, we need to know where it is. So you could use a moisture meter to try to find out how much moisture is at what height of the wall. So a moisture meter is definitely a good tool to have. And the last thing is, like, for example, a pen and paper along with clerical supplies so that you have enough of that so that you can actually work out there in the field. The next thing that we want to do is talk about cameras, okay? And a camera, you want to make sure that it has a good zoom and also a flash. Most cameras now have that. A lot of people emphasize the Carl Zeiss lens, but any good camera digital camera will do. Also, along with that is going to be the SD cards that actually is part of the camera. That's the memory portion of it, or the hard drive space of that for your photos. I see a lot of adjusters take about 5 to 6 of these SD cards, because what happens is that once they're out in the field, they'll use the whole SD card for the whole days of assignments, and then come back and then transfer those into the Simsol program. So an SD card, multiple SD cards are definitely a plus. Taking the pictures, you want to be at the optimal size, okay? Make sure you can set your cameras to a 640 by 480 resolution. That's the standard resolution. We want to keep that because that's a 5 by 4 image. That's what it equivalates to, all right? Also, set the DPI at 70 to 100 DPI. Okay, so that way you'll get a real crisp picture with the least amount of storage being taken. The next step is that you want to set the file type as a JPEG. So that what you can do with that is that will put some type of compression. Okay, that's on the photograph. And so what you want to do is next thing is keep your photos organized. Okay, it's important that you keep the photos organized so that what you'll do is you'll start when you come into a room, you will start at the living room and then go in a clockwise rotation and then end up at the living room. Then that makes sure that you've got all your rooms, okay, and they're also in order. All right, so make sure that we have our camera set correctly. The next thing that we've got is batteries, flashlights and batteries, and a car USB charger. I can't emphasize that every time I've been out to a loss that my disto might go bad or my camera battery might go bad and I need to change it. So make sure that for all your equipment, electrical equipment, that you have suitable batteries for that. And if you need to charge your phone up, you have the USB charger. And for the most current insurance information, now this is really important because you want to make sure you have your NFIP license current and on you at all times. So make sure that you can either laminate it or carry it with you, okay? The next thing that you might want to do is make sure that you have the latest NFIP policies, okay? Always have your policy on you at all times. There might be a question that you might have to answer for the insured, okay? The next topic that we want to talk about is having plenty of cash and credit available, okay? We recommend $5,000 for the first month. And the reason is because you'll never know when you might have emergencies and you need to do that. You might, general rules, $5,000 for your disposal. This will cover the housing, food, gas, emergencies that can happen. While it's best to have this in cash, some people use your credit cards for this period, okay? Next things that we need to do is do the vehicle maintenance, okay? And this is a very important topic because this is overlooked all the time. Before you go out and storm and you know you're going out, make sure that you do your scheduled maintenance inspection. This includes change your oil, check your tires, and spare tire. That's the important one, the spare tire. And also, when you're in a catastrophe situation out there, you bring a few full gas cans. And because what happens is that there might not be gas for miles. So please make sure that you account for that. All right. Accommodations. And this is an important topic too. You need to know where you're going to stay. There's like, for example, some services for like hotel planner, national insurance housing, Bridge Street, and for RV, look for Woodalls RV Campgrounds, AAA, and Allstays RV Parks. If you need those websites, we can provide those for you, okay? Okay, the thing that we need to do is we need to update our Simsol system. As you can see there, I have some updates that all I need to do is checkbox that and then update now, and that will take care of your Simsol system for updating. That includes your databases, your executable, and everything that you need to keep your Simsol current. The next thing that we're going to be doing is talk about will be the contact info. Okay, so that means that we're going to go and do our contacts. That'll be including the names, company addresses, phone numbers, and NFIP licensing information. We'll then move into preferences for setting that up. And you want to make sure your system preferences are set up correctly for the location markup factors, general contractors, overhead and profit. loss, cover and total page, notes, taxes, and signatures. Again, I'll go over this when we're in the system in a few moments, okay? We're also going to go into the speeding up of tips, okay? This includes the flood certification number to be inserted, setting up macros, using the scope of damage efficiently by the use of copy, clone, and group, okay? Another method is the next thing we're going to be doing is completely backing up your system. And that's very important. We recommend that you should do that every day, but it's a good idea to make sure you at least do backup every 7 days. Okay? So, okay, now that we've gone over everything that you need to know, let's get into Simsol to see how this is done. All right, so I'm going to switch screens up here. And what we're going to do is the first thing that we're going to do is do the maintain contacts. So I'm going to select maintain. I'm going to come up here and go to contacts. From contacts, I'm going to select new. And then what I'm going to do is select the categories. On here, I'm going to select adjusting company and adjuster. So all we need to do is fill this out. All right, and then I'm going to put my last name right here and my first name. All right, I'm not going to go into the mailing address or anything, but what is crucial is that you want to make sure that the information is in there, make sure your categories have been selected, and we're going to go to the other tab. From the other tab, I'm going to make sure that my NFIP number is listed, and as well as your state license number and the state that you have. So for example, I'm just going to put 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to select Florida, and then I'm going to do a NFIP license number 999811111. So now that I have that selected, I just click on done. And then you can also click on new, and you can also put in, for example, the carriers that you're going to be working for. So for example, Allstate, State Farm, and then alike. You can put that all in there. Once we have that selected, we're going to click on the done button, and then we're going to go to maintain preferences. Maintain preferences. This is setting up your computer. The first thing that we want to need to do is make sure that we have a logo for the adjusting firm that you're working for. So for example, here I have a Simsol logo here that I am using. I'm going to drop on down to the GCO&P. I'm going to put in 10 and 10. Okay, that's real important because most flood claims are going to use a general overhead and profit in their estimates. Don't forget to put the exclude O&P on the non-recoverable depreciation from RCV totals. That's very important, or else you will get your files kicked back, okay? I'm going to then come back to the loss information, and let me explain this screen here. This is if you go into a catastrophic situation, this left-hand side will actually address the loss date, the loss type, so I can select flood, the city, the state. Now, usually the city is not a big deal, but the state is. Maybe you're just going to be deployed in the state of Florida. Also, if there is a CAT number that's assigned to this loss, please put that in. You might have to readdress this because if the storm has just hit and you're in there, they might not have assigned a CAT number, but they will. Okay, and the other one is just make sure, it's important here, that you put in your name. And where do you think this comes from? This comes up from the contact manager that you've already filled out. So it's important. That's why we went to contact manager first. Okay, and if you're working for a single adjusting firm, then you can select it. All right. Now, once we have that, we're going to proceed into notes. Notes is given to you by the IA firm, so please check with your firm to make sure that you have all the notes or templates. They might give you, what I've seen that's coming up is before you go out on storm, check base with your IA firms and see if they have a Simsol template in an SFZ format. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But if they do, you want to acquire that. That will include all the template groups that that they want you to use without the storm period. Okay. Next thing is sales and other tax. Okay, so this is real important because in some states or in the National Flood Insurance Program, we only want to do material totals and equipment totals and not labor, profit, and taxable add-ons. Okay, make sure you exclude sales tax on non-recoverable depreciation from RCV totals. That's very important. The sales tax rate, do not put anything in here because once you get into the loss and you get that assigned from the first notice of loss, there will be a sales tax button based upon by zip code. So you'll address that later. But you want to make sure you set your preferences up this way so that it will tax the appropriate categories. All right, so that's pretty much what we need to do, except for one more thing. I'm going to check out the minimum wage. Everybody forgets to do this is because if you're working for the NFIP, in this case, you're going to have to set your minimal wage amount, which is $7.25. This will be different from the various if you're doing a wind claim for the state. So if you have the state of Alabama, you might have to pay $9 for a minimum wage, but the federal rate is $7.25. So just be aware what you're working for. If you're working a homeowner's claim, look at the state. And if you're working for the NFIP, make sure it's set to $7.25. Okay? And for that, that's pretty much it for, and also you want to make sure one more time, is the signature mentor. Forgot something there. Is that you've got your signature, so all you need to do is make sure it's in there. If you need to open up your signature, you can click on this button, open signature, and then find the signature and apply it. Okay? For new people that are just starting out in the NFIP, there is a mentor program. If you are doing that, please acquire the signature for your mentor, okay? And he will give that for you. All right, once we do that, we click on done and we're good to go for our setup. I would like to now go into a couple things that will speed up the process, okay? So what I'm gonna do is go into a claim. And from that, you want to make sure that we have the latest and greatest pricing table. So I would hit the building estimate information window. And as you can see over there, second quarter pricing 2018 is the current pricing. So I usually check that before I start my estimates. Make sure you have that. Okay, I'm going to go into the scope of damage. And from the scope of damage here, what we're going to do is we're going to go in and check on how to create a macro, okay? You want this preset before you go out on the storm site because this will save you a lot of time of actually, preparing your estimates. So what I'm going to do here is I have an estimate of living room. I'm going to double click on it. As you can see, it has 0 mounts in here. And I'm going to use a macro to do that, to populate the scope. So I'm making up macros here. I have one already made up, so I'm going to come up and then select that. Here I have a typical flood living room 4 foot. I'm going to select that and click on done. If you need help on using the macros, we have some self-help guides, and you can get that from simsol.com, okay, under My Simsol. Let's do this. When we come up here to the first line item, I always tell all our users to process all the macros because this is a question and answer. And if I did not push this process, it would go to the next one, say, would you like this line item to be inserted? I'm going to insert all of them. That's why I put process all macros. And I'm going to click accept. So I just come up here and whatever it needs, like for example, here I've got 29 linear foot for the sill. Okay, and now the macro is done and I'm going to click list. So this is the result. So the only thing I need to do is either add or delete anything that is not relevant to this scope. Okay, to make a macro up is real easy to do. You have to define the scope. All right, and as you can see, I just brought one in, but what I'm going to do here is from the list mode, I'm going to pick all the items or all the line items that I want attributed to this macro. Remember that the macro also does height, So if I came up here and did replace drywall and wood framing, that would give me my 4 foot high. So that's one of my macros is going to be typical living room 4 foot high. So make sure that you address all the heights and attributed to this macro. So as I do that, to make it, it's real simple. All we need to do is define the macro with the scope, and which I just did. Okay. If I do not want that windowsill in, I can just use my control key and then left click on it and then remove any of the line items, as I said before. So as we have this all in line blue, so what's going to happen, anything in blue is going to be attributed to the macro. So all I need to do is come up to macros, record macro, and give it a name. I'm going to say typical flood 4 foot, and I click done. So that's how easy it is to make a macro. So you want to make one up for example, in my opinion, make one for a living room, make one for a bedroom, make one for a bathroom, and make one for a kitchen. So basically, all the items that you would use for those type of areas. Okay. So once you have made those and you take that out on storm, that's going to save you an immense amount of time. Okay. When creating your estimates out there in the field. So now that I've clicked on done here, I'd like to show you another time-saving tip, and that is copying. So if I need to do this and use the same scope or close to it and make a bedroom, I can simply come up, highlight it, and click copy. And now, once I say yes, it's going to bring up my area listing screen. I can say bedroom number 1. Change the dimensions. Let's say this is a 15 by 15 and it's 9 foot. So as I do that and click on done, those calculations will now be to a 15 by 15 room with any of the offsets that has popped in there. So that's how easy it is to make a copy. I'm not really going to go into the clone. Clone is just 2 or more rooms. So if you need to make 2 or more of these, you would use the clone option instead of the copy. Okay. There's also a global function, but what you want to do on the global, guys, is you want to just get to know the global function before you go out to the storm. And so what you'll do is just come up and say, oh, I want to have a pre-existing claim, and I just want to come up here and I want to actually do an emergency call water loss. I can then select it and then attribute it to any of the areas that you want. Get to know this feature. This will save you an immense amount of time when you're writing your estimates. So what I'm saying is before you go out on the storm, get acclimated to these tools. Okay. I'm going to get out of that for right now. And remember that we do have some third-party tools we can import. For example, in our roofs, if you're doing wind claims on deployment, remember our third party, we can do Eagle View and Sky Measure. I'm not really going to do it at this juncture. All right, so the next thing that we're going to be talking about is going to be how to back up your claims. This is real important, okay? Because if you're out there and you've got all these claims, you want to make sure that you can back them up. So if you have a hard disk failure, you can actually buy a new computer with that $5,000 you brought and then set up Simsol and get back to work. So let me show you how to do that. First thing that we need to do is we need to be out of a claim. Once we're out of a claim, we select in the blue what claims that we want to archive. Okay. Now I can do a single archive or a multi-part archive, and it's the same procedure, except for that we have more claims highlighted. So to highlight more claims, we can select the control key and then select the claims that we want. So I have 3 claims here. Now, if you have a demo copy, this will not work. So be aware, if you have a demo copy, this function will not work. If you're a paid user, it will work. So as you can see, the archive button is highlighted. I'm going to click on the archive. I'm going to click on the browse button, and it showed you what claims I'm going to back up. I can just come up here. Now you can actually, if you have Dropbox, you can select a Dropbox claim and then give it a name and click save. Once I have that selected, so I have a path in there. Now this could be off a Dropbox, or this could be off site, Google Drive, any folder that's accessible, excuse me. And we're just, and the last step is to click archive. So as you can see, there's our progress bar, and it's backing up those claims. Takes a couple seconds. It depends on how big the claim is. So we have 290.48. That's kind of nice. Another thing that I'd like to tell you is that you can exclude your photos. I don't recommend that, but if you needed to, because of size considerations, you could exclude photos from this archive, but I don't recommend it. Okay. So basically, those are some of the time-saving tips that we recommend. And so I'm going to turn it back to Nicole. And thank you very much for listening. We're going to have question and answers very shortly.
All right. And as far as the archiving, he didn't mention this, but we're soon going to be releasing an automatic method to back up claims through a new Simsol utility. And so we're actually still working out the details, such as the release date and cost. But if you want to be in the know, you can email us at communications@simsol.com, or you can respond to the follow-up email we'll be sending out in a couple of days. All right, now we're going to open it up for Q&A. I have a question here. Danny, can you show again how you get to the preferences in Simsol?
Yes. You have to be out of a claim, which you see right here, and that returns us back, and we need to go to the main option called Maintain. From Maintain, the first option is Preferences. Once you do that, this is your actual template. So every claim from now on, after you set this up, is going to use these settings.
All right. And so just another question here as far as the reporting. We have trouble with the report feature not reproducing accurately on the screen. Any guidance? Can you talk a little bit about the report feature?
Yes. On the report section, if I come up into this one here, the report feature is, are you integrating pictures or any other type of documentation? Question for the user?
They have not responded.
Okay. Well, basically here.
Template. Sorry, template.
Oh, on the template, yes. If what we have a problem with, or what comes to being, is people like to use copy and paste from pre-existing programs, like, for example, Microsoft Word. And that throws it out a little bit. What you probably could do on the reporter, if you did go into the reporter, if I go into a report here, and one thing that I omitted to do, but I'm going to do it right now, is you want to put in your FCN card. Okay, so I just wanted to show you how to do that, and I forgot to do that. But anyways, I've got an FCN card here, and I'm just going to come up here and say insert graphic. And then from that, I'm going in and I'm finding my FCN card. Okay, in this case, there it is right there, 2018. Now I have to resize this real quick because of the size of it, but there we go. And what I'm going to do here is, now that I have my FCN card, I can come up here and save it as a template. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and save as template as report, and now it's saved, and I'm going to pick in a group, and now I can actually have this NFIP authorized FCN card to be inserted in every single documentation that I set up in packets up to the carrier or to your IA firm for payment. They want a copy of this FCN card. So this is what I did. I can make this as a template, and all I have to do is do a new report.
All right.
and then pop
Yes.
that in. Yeah, but the template, Nicole, is what you want to do is to answer the previous user's question is use an RTF import. That will strip out all the codes that Microsoft embeds in when you do a copy and paste. So I would use the RT export or import into RTF. There's a function in here that does that. Hold on just a second. Export, import. Here we go. So what you would want to do is in your Microsoft Word document, you're going to do a file save as, whatever the document you want to import, and then make that an RTF, rich text format. And then from that, you're going to then come up and select an import. I don't have an RTF file on me right now, but you would click on that and that would strip all the code. So that way, when it comes in, you can then use your margins and all the other functionality of the reporter. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, he just said that does make sense. And with the macros, can you delete a macro?
Yes, I can
create it. Can you show us how to do that?
Sure. What you're going to do is you're going to be out of the claim and you're going to go into maintain, and then we're going to be looking for the macros. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Oh, I'm sorry, correction. We cannot go in there. I'm going to come in here and go into the macro delete function, excuse me. So I'm going to come up here, go to macros. I have to go into the scope of damage. Freudian slip on that one. All right, so as I come up here, I can go up into macros, delete a macro.
All right, thank you for showing us that. And then another question here. You guys, I know we have a markup factor entry. Can you show us how to do that?
Yes, on the preference screen, there is an option. So I'm going to get out of this for just a second. I'm going to go to maintain. I'm going to go to preferences. On the first screen that's on here, it will say enable location factor markup. Make sure that that's checked. Once it's checked, and I can then go into the claim. And if I go down into the building estimate information window and click database, I should be able, going into the location factor, I want to use the location factor. There we go. There you see your markup factor.
Great. All right, we're just going to open it up for another couple of minutes or so. If you do have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. All right. And can you, Danny, discuss a little bit about organizing photos?
Okay, photos is a personal thing, but on your photos section, what I do when I take my pictures is I'm pretty much in line before it even gets into Simsol. I will go in and I will start at one point, either interior or exterior. So if I was on the interior, as I said before, you start at the living room and you're going to work clockwise and you're going to go to every room until you end up at the same room you started, which will be the living room. And then that way you've got all your photos organized in a sequential order so that when you bring them in, they're already in a sequential order. Then what you could do is you can bring in your photos, and with Simsol's new system, we can actually then come up and rename these images if you really wanted to with a photo number. So for example, if I have some photos here and I'm going to select them. And then I can come up and then put, let's say, living room. And it's starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't really matter. And then I can select rename selected photos and then place them in the ungroup function. So this is the ungroup photos. What's new within Simsol is all the areas that you have defined will come up and show over here on the right-hand side called area photos, okay? So then actually what I could do is I can then rename these if I needed to, or reorder them by just right-clicking and select all, and then I can use it sort by alphabetically or sort the area. it's up to you. So I can sort it by alphabetical if you need to, and it'll put it right in that order. Another one is you would have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which I did in the ungroup photos, and then you can just move those on and they're already in order. Does that help?
I'm sure it does. Thank you, Danny. Is there any way to create an area for organizing photos that does not show up on the estimate?
Does not. Well, the only time you can sort however you want, as long to not showing up on the estimate means you're not printing them. So
okay, so
basically you can set all these up, set it to an area and use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you can actually set them alphabetically, you know. So if you put like 1 and then master bedroom, 2, another area name, it will then sort when we come up here to sort and select all, and then we sort alphabetically. So if you use a numeric alpha naming nomenclature, it'll just come into the order that you want.
All right, I think that concludes our webinar. All right, I just want to thank you so much for attending. Again, we're going to be following up with an email that will include a survey, as I mentioned before, and a link to this recording. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Our number is there. As always, our tech support is free. Please call us. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5:30. And you can also send us an email at info@simsol.com. And again, I want to mention about the new backup utility that we're currently working on. If you want to stay up to date on that, please email me at communications@simsol.com. And then that way I can keep you updated as far as the releases for that. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. And everyone have a great weekend and a great evening. Thank you.